the biggest thing for me is forgiveness. And the next thing is committing to myself and committing to the bigger picture, because the one coffee that I had this morning means nothing to the no coffees that I'll have or that I won't have for the rest of the year.
Welcome back, or welcome to another episode of the Success Times Happiness podcast. I'm your host, Richard Thompson, and today is our very first interview done over the internet, or remote interview. And when Cody and I started this project, we sort of thought, when can we start doing those remote interviews? And we saw that the research suggested that 96 or 97% of podcasts don't go past episode 21. So to make it more challenging for us, I think we agreed that we wouldn't do remote interviews until we surpassed that number. So this is episode 23, and so we have successfully passed that benchmark, and we've made the decision to start doing some of the interviews remotely. So today's episode is with Jackie Tann. Jackie is the host of the podcast Bodies Built Better, and an extremely wonderful person who has had a big career decision, I guess, intersection of her life that I'm looking forward to talking with and about, because I think I resonate a lot with what she's going through, and I think a lot of people can as well. So I hope you enjoy this interview with Jackie Tann. Jackie Tann, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Thank you, Richard, for having me. I'm good. I'm actually nervous, if I'm completely honest.
Oh, gosh.
But it's good to see you again.
No reason to be nervous. Now, I had the very fortunate opportunity to be on your podcast. I think that must have been last year.
It was, yeah.
And your podcast, Bodies Built Better, is going gangbusters, and so I thought it would be wonderful, as we're starting out on Success Times Happiness, to get you on. And what's interesting that I find is that you've gone through an amazing, I guess, life experience or impasse that I wanted to talk about today. So I guess to kick things off, Jack, how would you define yourself? Who is Jackie Tann?
This
Hard
is
question,
not
straight
an
up.
easy question.
Yeah, for sure.
I would, oh gosh, literally answering on the spot here, and I'm generally not very good at doing that. So I try my best. But I think I would define myself as someone who craves adventure and freedom and love. And, you know, if you asked me this time potentially a year ago, I would probably say I define myself as a massage therapist, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, and you know, all of that stuff. But obviously, and what you're referring to is a massive career change, and leaving a career of 17 years during this time. That was in April. It's currently almost mid-September. You know, through that small time, I think I'm learning that I'm much more than, you know, what I do. And I've got a whole lot more to offer than, you know, the job that I was in. So I would define myself as someone who, is adventurous and loves to learn and loves to love and wants to share that with as many people as possible, and just enjoy life.
I think that's an amazing answer. Unscripted or scripted.
I'm pretty happy with that.
So take me back, as you said, a 17-year career as a massage therapist. At what point, or was there a distinctive moment where you thought, right, I need to have a greater level of introspection here? Or was it sort of over a period of time where you just felt a little bit unsatisfied?
I think it was actually both, because, you know, in hindsight, if I was honest with myself from the beginning, I think there would have been, a few years where I thought, or where I knew, or subconsciously I knew it wasn't as fulfilling as it was to begin with. And when I think about, when I finally made that decision, that was during a time where, the last, or since 2020, I guess you could say, my life's changed dramatically, and I've had probably the biggest experiences of my life where, for the first time I moved away from home. So my husband and I moved state, and obviously COVID was a huge change and experience, and then we moved back home, and so like all of these things just kept happening, and I felt like all of these things happened in a way that kind of kept slapping me in the face around the work that I do. And, I just started to realize I would get to work and I wasn't excited to get to work, and I didn't feel like I was growing, and I wasn't being challenged. And those are all the things that I value so much. And of course, I mean, you would know, and my clients would know, and people who follow me would know that, I preach discovering your potential and living your potential, and I just didn't feel like I was doing that. And so all of these things just kept coming up for me, and it just came to a point where I couldn't ignore that any longer, and I was feeling, I had to make the decision. And so people ask how I made the decision, and I guess for me it was, I wouldn't say painful, but we'll use that word for now, but it was more painful to stay in that position than it was to leave it. And ultimately that's what it came to, which was really hard.
Did you get to a place where you staying where you were was physically more challenging than the unknown of leaving? Or could you alternatively see that the trajectory of that was in the future going to be uncomfortable, so you called it early, or you that discontent? What was the level of discontent with yourself and your environment? Because I think there's a vast majority of people in the population who, don't live their potential and stay in that job because it is a dangerous position of not fulfilling their every desire, but unfortunately not so challenging or so difficult for them to leave. So they're stuck in this grey zone of discontent, which is not forcing them out of that position, but also not ticking all the boxes that future potential could. So I guess the question is for you is, what level were you at discontent? Were you that challenged that you're like, all right, I can't stand another day of this? Or was it actually, this is fine, but I know there's a greater level of potential out there for me?
Yeah, it was certainly the latter. Like I didn't want to get up every morning and go, oh, not again. Like I want to wake up and feel excited and give my everything and know that I'm being challenged and know that I am helping people on another level. And whilst I know I was helping people at the time, and my clients were wonderful, and it has nothing to do with the relationships that I formed, because in truth, like if anything, that's the thing I miss the most, is those beautiful connections. But for me, it was, I know that I'm not living my potential. Like I need to be giving everything at the end of the day, and I need to be excited, and I need to be challenged, and I need to continue to learn more, and then what I've learnt, offer that, and I guess educate others on those learnings. Like I just felt so stagnant, and that for me isn't enough. And, to your point where you say that, there are some out there, a lot of people potentially out there who are doing a job that, they're discontent with, but, potentially maybe the money's so great that they'll do it. And I think that's admirable in the sense that, sometimes you just got to do what you got to do to make ends meet or provide for your family or whatever it is. But I'm lucky in the sense that I was able to get the support from my husband to be able to step back from a position that wasn't fulfilling me, and to really give myself the chance to explore those opportunities. But, on the other hand, if I was earning the money that I want to be earning, would I have made the same decision? I'm not sure. But, to be earning what I want to be earning, I need to be working more. And that for me is not the answer either, because, it's a physically demanding job. It's also a mentally demanding job and an emotionally demanding job, because, people are there not only with, their physical discomforts, but also the emotional discomforts, and they share that with you because you provide that safe space for them. And so, it's a hard decision to make, but at the end of the day, it's always going to be a personal decision, and what was right for me was to move on.
I do love the hypothetical postulation of if money or opportunity were not in question, what would you do with your life? What would fulfill you? Because I do think the people chase the money number, but ultimately, like if you're wired in a way that I think you and I are, in the sense that, yes, that's recognition of the work that you do, but realistically, if you're not enjoying what you're doing, no money can sort of cover over the lack that job or that role has. And I can speak from very, very strong experience that is absolutely the case. And no extra money or raise or bonus or opportunity can fake that. And so I think longevity of fulfillment comes down to, has got less to do about the end number and more to do about, is it in line with your values and does it tick those boxes of fulfillment that you're looking for?
Exactly.
And then for you make that decision with the support of your husband. Where do you go from there?
Well, this is an interesting one because I've had to consciously make sure and intentionally make sure that I've not rushed into anything because of I guess, whether this is my own mind, putting pressure on myself to get a job, get an income. But to answer your question, where to from here? Like, there's things that I'm working on. Like you said, I've got a podcast and, I've had some opportunities come up with my massage association. So I'm still able to, share what I've learnt over the years and, through my experiences, I get to, teach others, which is really important to me. So whilst there's nothing that's, set in stone right now, there's these different opportunities coming in and out that is really exciting for me. And on the flip side, there's also lots of free time, which is really freaking scary for me as well. So what's happening now is just trying to remind myself that I don't need to feel guilty right now because we're okay as a unit. Myself and my husband, we're good, and he's the most supportive, caring, wonderful person. So I'm so lucky in that sense. Well, not lucky, I chose him, so obviously. But yeah, it's one where I'm consciously trying to take the pressure off myself, because I know I've got the skills and I've got the knowledge to make something more of my life and myself, and it's just, it's not completely clear right now what that is. And being okay with that is tough, but yeah, it's something I'm working on.
It's like talking to myself in a mirror, honestly. I think.
How did you do it then? Because you were in the same position, right? Not in the same position. You're no doubt earning way more than me. So for someone who is so good at something and earning great money, like, how did you come to the decision to move away from that?
You're referring to me leaving law, or?
Yes.
Okay.
What else did you leave?
So to answer your question, my biggest pain point was the fact that I was away from home physically. I had to sit in an office. I didn't hate law, very similar to you in terms of the massage. Didn't hate it, didn't fulfill me though. And maybe in retrospect, I don't regret anything in any of those decisions, but I probably was a little bit too. I was young in the sense of going, well, maybe I could have done more in a different side of the law, or more of a business side of the law at that age. But I was impatient, and I was like, I didn't want to be in the office for that many hours working for somebody else. And so I thought I could just replicate that doing the online coaching stuff. And sure enough, we were able to do that. So I'm very conscious. And I think the difficulty, so I referenced, I guess, more of the last 6 months or 5 months in my life now to be in that same place as you, of going, I was in this post-sport, do I go back and race? Do I go back and coach full-time? Do I go back and be a lawyer position now? And I can very much resonate with you in the sense of I didn't want to make a snap decision because it became difficult. Like that feeling of unease, right, is so when you have a trodden path or a career, or what, even in the next 12 to 18 months, you're very certain of what that next period of time looks like. There's a lot of safety and certainty around that. And when you don't have that, when you're like, I don't know, you're literally opening up a choose your own adventure book, because you could go any which way. I'm with you, you have these tools inside of you that that you can achieve anything you want. And my position is that you can achieve anything you want in life. Anybody can. You've got to want it, but there's nothing stopping you from doing anything. But like we said before, like, it's got to tick your boxes of what you're looking for in life. And if all of that means that you are a volunteer gardener at the Botanical Gardens, that's your jam, then that's beautiful. Obviously, you got to pay bills somehow, and you got to work that out. But then you work that out. But my biggest issue was, back in 7 years ago when I left law, I knew what I wanted. I was like, this isn't great, but I know that I can. My passion. I really enjoyed working with people to coach. And I could do that online, and I could make a business out of that. I understood all of that, and I just did that. This year, it's like, I don't know where. For a long time, don't really know what I'm actually wanting. So from life, so what's going to actually fulfill me. So that's a much more challenging and confronting position to be in. And so that leads us to the next point, which I wanted to ask you about and talk to you about, is leaning in and, I guess, doing the hard things, which, your experience with this, and that sort of leans to that whole idea of embracing the discomfort of having so much spare time on your hands now. But what's your strategy or thought process around doing the hard things?
Well, I guess when I'm in the middle of it, like during this whole time, there have been ebbs and flows where I can be really excited about what's to come and the possibilities or opportunities. And then, of course, there are times where I'm obviously really down and hard on myself because things aren't happening quick enough, or I don't have clarity yet, or whatever it is. And those are the moments where I really make an effort to stop and pause and step back, because if I don't, then I could very well make a decision, a rash decision based on fear because of how I feel in that moment. So doing hard things when it gets tough, just stop and just take stock of where I'm at and what I've been through to get to that position. But, I've also talked about hard things in the past, as in terms of setting new goals or trying to achieve new things or break habits. And, as little as, little, it's all relative to who you are and what you do and how you think. But, quitting coffee, for example, is something that I've been trying to do, which might not seem grand and huge, and but it's one of those things where I find it hard. So all the little things I believe that are hard, annoyingly hard, from the little to the really extreme things, by practicing doing these things, it really does build that armor. So when you do, or when you are faced with something, harder, awful, it does help you to stop and take stock and make a decision that is going to serve you and not something that you could potentially regret. So, hard things is something that I've really tried to incorporate in my life, no matter how small I might or how irrelevant I might think it is. Because, practicing that and moving through those feelings and dealing with that and being consistent and committing and, all of those things help to build that armor for the bigger stuff that comes along.
When you have that conversation with yourself that, okay, I acknowledge doing hard things is the answer, okay? Like, I think that's a fairly safe position to come to, because discomfort is, or sacrifice is essentially putting off today's pleasure for a much greater level of pleasure in the future. That you have this conversation with yourself to say, okay, this is what we're going to do. And I know that's going to be challenging, however small, but then we're all human and we don't follow through on things that we promise to ourselves that we have done, or that we will do, rather. How do you talk to yourself when you do fail, when you do have that coffee, or let's say you're wanting to break a habit of not having anything sugary after dinner, and yet the next day you do it, or the next week you do it, and it is. I think it's interesting that you do say, however small, but it's almost like you fail at that. And no one knows this, right? No one knows that I've just scoffed a family block of chocolate, last night, but you do. I know that, and so then there's this impasse of your subconscious going, or even your conscious to go, well, man, you just promised yourself you wouldn't do that, and you've just bailed on yourself, and that happens to everyone every day of the year. And
story and so of my life.
Then no wonder we talk negatively about ourselves to ourselves, and look at the mirror and look at disdain, because every single cross you've bared and every failure you've made to yourself. How do you, Jack, knowing all that, how do you talk to yourself? How do you forgive yourself? How do you rectify that situation to give yourself another chance?
I'm going to let you in on a secret. I had a coffee today. In fact, I've had more coffees in the last 3 weeks than I have had since I quit. And the reason I say this is because I now know that I can start, and I now know that I will start again. And so the biggest thing for me is forgiveness. And the next thing is committing to myself and committing to the bigger picture, because the one coffee that I had this morning means nothing to the no coffees that I'll have or that I won't have for the rest of the year or for the next 6 weeks. And so whilst, you know, I've committed to something, no coffee for the next 12 months, I'm no worse off for that one coffee that I do have, or I'm not a bad person because I chose to have a coffee one morning or 2 mornings in a row. The most important thing for me is knowing that I'll get back on track, and that the next 12 months or the next 6 weeks or the next week, 7 days, whatever it is, knowing that I'll get back to it is way more important to me than scolding myself for the 1 or 2 that I do have. So it is bigger picture thinking for me. And that's what I've failed to do in the past, because I've done exactly what you've said. I've, you know, berated myself over a block of chocolate. And I'm like, oh, well, no one knows. I'll just do it again the next night. But holding myself accountable and, you know, I'm getting better at it because, you know, I'm doing a lot of work over the last, 18 months now with self-awareness and self-love and all of this, and really getting to know myself. And I'm lucky to have people around me who I'm learning from as well, and who are able to teach me, these better habits and how to make these changes. And yeah, that mindset of, forgiveness, let's take in the bigger picture here and recommit to that bigger picture, has been the game changer for me.
Yeah, I think forgiveness is a huge one, self-forgiveness, because we're quite happy to, like the idea of unconditional love, let you unconditionally love your child or you unconditionally love your parents. And by virtue of that definition is that you will love them no matter what. And it's, I think it's important for the people in anyone's life that you unconditionally love, to on a true sense of that meaning, that you can, no matter what you do, I will love you. There is a position whereby it's hard to do that if you don't unconditionally love yourself. And by virtue of that is that you've got to be able to actively forgive yourself, because you'll, or in other words, you'll love yourself irrespective of your failures. And I do think people they struggle with a relationship with themselves, quite rightly, I guess, because you do know all the failures you've done in 30, 40 years of your history, whereas no one else knows that. And they can come big mistakes to the eating chocolate or having a coffee when you've told yourself you wouldn't. But I think awareness of that, and I agree with you, I think forgiveness is a huge step that has to happen, because you're human and we all make mistakes. Exactly.
Absolutely.
So where do you now you're in this place? The reason why, I really wanted to get you on, not only because you're a wonderful human, but I think that a lot of people can take inspiration from you, because, as I said, I think people sit in that grey space of not jumping because they're, I guess, contently discontent. And do you look back now you're here and regret the time it took you to get there?
No, I do not. I choose to believe that, things happen at the time they're meant to happen. And so much has happened throughout my career, and I think I needed to have, so there was a very difficult period in my career that I want to say almost broke me. And I believe I needed to have, this time afterwards. It was almost like my career needed to end on my terms, on a positive note. And that's for me what I think I did. And so, no, there's no regrets how it happened or how it played out, because
when it got difficult in that moment of your career, why wasn't the discontent so strong then that didn't force you to leave at that point?
Because I never felt, so I had these grand dreams and vision for what I thought my business would look like, and what I was striving for, and it was still really strong. Like, I still had something to go for. Like, I hadn't reached what I'd wanted in my career, and so that was always what I was going for. And during the hard time, yes, it was hard, but I still felt I had more to give, and so that's why I kept going. And this time round, I just felt like that was I'd given everything. I literally didn't feel like there was any more I could give that would make a difference to people, or at least make a difference to the way I felt and the way I was showing up. Does that make sense?
And so, and so looking forward, other than what are you doing now what does the future need to look like for you to be fulfilled?
Honestly, I'm still trying to figure this out. And that used to really scare me. Like, obviously I've been someone who's always had this grand vision. I've always had dreams, and I know what I'm striving for. And so I set the goals in order to get there. And now I'm like, well, I don't know. So I don't yet know what I'm aiming for, in the sense of what that looks like. I can tell you what I'm aiming for in terms of how I feel. I want to feel excited to show up. I want to feel like I'm making a difference, and I want to feel joy when I'm doing it. But what that looks like I'm doing, I'm not yet sure. And so I'm not putting pressure on myself to figure it out right now, because I think there's so many different ways that I can experience that. And so trying to find one thing is, I think, would just hold me back. And it's placing these limitations on ourselves, which we're so good at doing. And so why do that when you could do a whole bunch of stuff? And why, I guess I don't want my mind to hold me back, which is why I've yet to go, this is what I'm doing, because there is so much more beyond what I even know. It's that whole, you don't know what you don't know, right? So I'm out here just going, I can do this, I'm good at this, and keep doing the things that I really enjoy. And by doing that, by osmosis, I'm hoping I'm just going to draw all the good things into me, right? But at the end of the day, I think, there's going to be a point where I go, right, I do know what I want to do. And I feel like that's going to be because I've been able to let all these other things come in and show up for me. And I don't think, if I didn't have this mindset, I don't think I would be open to even realize that there's all this other stuff that could happen. That's what I'm choosing to believe anyway.
I accept that. Definitely accept that. I certainly think in this iteration of my life, I was worried that feeling of I guess treading water, let's call it, and waiting for the the light bulb to flick on to go, this is the direction that I need to go. I guess personally, I was worried that that feeling that was going to become comfortable. The feeling of the anxiety around it was going to become so normalized that I was worried that I'd need that feeling. So that would get in my way of making a clear decision of going, well, I'm going to go down this path. And if that path is not the path that I want to go down, then that's okay, but I'm going to choose that path rather than be unsure and not move, if that makes sense.
So are you saying you would rather tread water or you wouldn't?
No, I think
do you choose
there is a period of time.
Choose?
I think you need to obviously spend that time treading water and going, okay, I know that isn't what fills my cup up. That isn't what's lighting my life up. So I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to tread water until I find that.
Yeah.
And as we discussed, there's an element of anxiety or challenge just to be in that space of uncertainty.
Hugely.
But I guess you become comfortable in that. If you become comfortable there, then you'll be there forever. Of going, well, I don't really want to choose anything. Yeah, just in case it's not the path that I want to go down, and therefore I won't, unless every duck is in a line, unless every light is green, I'm not going to go that direction. Therefore, you sit there and tread water, and then you become 70 years of age and still not really sure what I'm going to do with my life. And so, there is that adage of going, okay, well, at some point you've got to make a decision. And that's what, for me at least, that was like, okay, I was scared that I'd be treading water for the rest of my life because I'm not sure how, because I wasn't prepared to make a decision either way.
So have you made a decision?
I think I have, and that's just by saying I think I have puts conditions on it, but I'm more clear about that direction than I have ever been. So there is certainly the unknown, and I think I guess my point is that it's the knowing feeling and the known risks of treading water is safer now than going down a path where you're not 100% sure of the outcome or the success of what that looks like, or whether or not that path will tick all the boxes that you're looking for. And so that's where that's
I would
the
love
difficulty,
to know that,
right? Where you're like, I know.
Yeah.
You get.
How did you get there? So how long have you been treading water and you've gone, actually, I'm okay with this until the right thing comes up for me?
I was happy to tread water. It's been probably 4 or 5 months, and from the beginning I was happy to tread water until something came along that lit my fire, I guess. Mm-hmm. But I was doing myself a disservice by treading water because I was looking at every single option, but I could sense that there was trepidation of going down a path, of any path, because that means that I would have to then risk. I don't know whether it was the opportunity cost of the other paths or whether it was the fact that I was becoming very safe in the area in that treading water, that I was like, I don't want to commit because that's unknown. So
and that's interesting because I've felt like in my circumstances, things that have come up for me, I'd be like, yeah, let's do it. And those things haven't been things that take up, my entire week. Neither of them have been full-time things. And so I guess for me, it makes it easy to go, yeah, I'll commit to that. Let's see what happens. So that's how I've taken things that have come into my path. But I'd love to know, like in terms of what you're talking about, last 4 months, are you referring to having worked for a very long time towards Ultraman?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, through that Ultraman, so that was a 3-year commitment, I guess, by virtue of COVID and life, that sort of extended itself to a 3-year envelope, and all of my contracts and sponsorships were geared around that 3-year time frame. And at the start of that 3 years, I had essentially a full-time amount of athletes that I was coaching. And because of that, because I had that 3-year runway of being a paid athlete, that I didn't need to coach that many people. So I gradually dropped that down to only a handful. And then Ultraman sort of finished as it did in May. And now I've got only a handful of athletes that I coach. I still enjoy that, but probably not to the level of that I did. Wouldn't enjoy a full-time capacity. I enjoy the handful of athletes that I do coach, and I feel very privileged to be able to do that. But the idea of going back and being a full-time online coach doesn't light my fire. And then, it's the question of, well, do I go back into the sport? How do I feel about that? Do I go back into law? I have got, probably a 25-year career ahead of me in law if I go back there. And I've got to think about the financial future of my children. So, there's a huge amount of things to consider, as well as other online business ideas that I have and things like that. So the difficulty, I guess, is like I've got these skills and I can do, I can put my mind to anything, but it's what's going to fulfill me. And that, I guess, the anxiety of treading water and not really making a decision I could see, at least in self-introspection, that I could see that I was doing myself a disservice by staying in that treading water position. So I knew that at some point, sooner rather than later, I would have had to make a decision to move in a direction and not just sit there.
Do you feel like you got everything that you wanted out of those 3 years, out of the sport?
I don't know, when you became the host and I became the guest of this episode.
You knew I had questions.
I think other than the actual performance I did, but it's never, for me, it wasn't so much about the performance rather than the actual journey of it, but which is pretty cliche to say. But the goal for me, the attraction was, what can I do physically? What can I do physically? Not what can anyone else do. And I was satisfied with what I was able to achieve, at least even in training in the lead up to that race. I was able to make it into a business for myself that I would never dream of. Like, that was just, and I'll look back in those 3 years and think that's insane that I was able to represent so many amazing brands and to the level that I was able to do, and learned a lot through that process as well. Definitely a question is, like, if I was to go back, I would definitely go back. It would have to be for me, in the sense that I would go back without sponsors and I would go back without the limelight or whatever that, however you define that in a niche sport like Ultraman. But go back and do it just for that, and just to go and break 20 hours. That was my goal, and do it, and then leave, because without any fanfare, without any Instagram, anything, just go and do it. And that opportunity, I think, will still be there in the next couple of years based on physiology of endurance sport. But right now, there's not that pull for me to go and do that right now. So I can't fake that. You can't fake 30 hours of training into something that you don't really want to do. So, but if I'm being honest with myself, I probably only was drawn to do that because of the business side of it. So I was obliged to do the race. I had contracts in place, and I was like, okay, well, I've set out to achieve something. I like the idea of planning it and logistics and all that and training, but I don't miss it, if that's the question as well. Like, I could count on my hand how many times I've ridden a bike since May. So I certainly don't miss the training. I definitely look at it as work, but I think on that side of things, if the desire comes back, it'll come back. If it doesn't, I'm not trying. You can't fake that.
That's so interesting. Because I think it comes back to, what you asked me earlier about regret, and, do you regret not having left earlier and whatnot? And, same for you in terms of, do you regret anything? And it doesn't, you've obviously really thought about it, and you are in touch with how you feel and, honest with yourself, which is really refreshing to hear. But yeah, I find it interesting in the sense that, you know, when I think back on my career and, you know, the huge vision that I had for myself and, you know, the work and the energy and the time and the sacrifice, you know, put into that, I'm sometimes really sad about not having reached the potential I believe it had. And so, yeah, I guess I relate that back to what you did and, you know, the amount of time that and energy and sacrifice you made to achieve something. Yeah, so that's why I ask.
Yeah, I don't think that sadness and regret are mutually exclusive, though. I think you can look back at experiences in your life or crossroads or decisions that you've made or relationships that you've had, and you can be sad that they turned out the way they did or that that you didn't achieve what you wanted to achieve. But I think you can still, and that's okay. That's a good emotion to feel because it meant something to you. That goal meant something to you. You'd be sad. You know, I think I'll be sad if I don't go back and not break 20 hours officially. But I won't regret not going back. For instance, going if a crystal balling, if the alternate was worthwhile. And even if the alternate is worthwhile in the sense of the next, let's say 5 years, if the alternate decision is worthwhile, that won't change the fact that I will still be sad that I didn't do it. But I guess what we're both trying to avoid going forward here is not regretting decisions. And I think that's really important. And that just comes back to understanding yourself and being true to that. So I think if you're not true to yourself, that's when the regrets come in on all cases. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Jack, this has been beautiful, and I feel like we haven't really scratched it, but I'll take over this episode as a proper host.
That's right. This is yours.
Doing it. Yes. This is meant to be my episode. Every guest we have on, we have rapid fire questions, which you have had notice as against the first question I threw at you. So the very first question is what was the number one tip you would give someone who is searching to be more successful in their life?
Self-awareness, 100%. If you don't know yourself, you can't make decisions that will truly serve you, I believe.
And
I don't know how rapid fire you want these.
No, that's fine. It's okay. Let me ask that follow-up question on that then. How does someone who may not be so self-aware, what is the first step to that process?
Well, I think the first step is wanting to get to know yourself. So even being aware of the fact that you're not aware is self-awareness. So committing to, getting to know yourself, whether, and the best thing I would say is when you react to something, asking yourself or taking a step back and actually asking why you reacted in that way. And if you're so unaware that you're not even aware that you reacted in a certain way and you really want to work on self-awareness, then what I would say is ask the people around you those sorts of questions.
How you react.
And how you react, and be willing to accept what they say without reacting because that's going to be hard for those people as well. Like, whether it's friends or family, they're not going to want to tell you, one time you reacted in a way that was just over the top or, whatever it is. But getting that feedback from the people that you really trust and care about is one way to start that process. And then it's like yarn, right? Like it's pulling the string. It's like one thing after another. How else can I get to know myself? And, even asking yourself, asking yourself with the decisions that you've made in the past, why exactly you made them. With the relationships you've had in the past that maybe didn't work out, why didn't they work out? And instead of putting it on everyone else or, bring the limelight on yourself, what is it that you it's responsibility, it's accountability. So that's where I'd start. It's just bringing that spotlight back on you and questioning everything that you do.
Okay, number one tip on someone looking to be more happy in their lives.
Self-awareness.
Okay, fair play as well. Fair play. It comes back to that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because the more aware of, what you say, what you do, why you make those decisions, your values and what you believe, your choices are going to reflect your values. And if you're choosing something that doesn't reflect what you think is a value of yours, then that's something that needs to be figured out and worked on. And once you do that, you're able then to move through life and, consciously. There's so many times where, how many times have we made a decision based on what we think is right for ourselves, but really it's what we think is right for someone else, or what's going to make someone else happy, which will give ourselves happiness. Again, bringing that spotlight back on ourselves, so that we can make choices, again, that serve us. Yeah.
Great. Number one book that you gift or that you recommend?
I love books, and so this was really hard for me. And I'm someone who reads 5 books at a time. I don't read books from start to finish. I kind of take what I need and then move on. So I was trying to think of the books that have really made an impact in my life over the years. So recently, it was the last 3 years, but Heavily Meditated by Caitlin Cady came to me in my life where things were really shit, really hard. And that book changed my life. I really feel like meditation has had a profound impact on my life. So I'd have to say that one, because it's most recently had such an impact on my life. But I love books, and there are so many great books that I could say, but that wouldn't be rapid fire, so we'll leave it at that.
And most influential person in your life, Jack?
I suck at rapid fire. I don't have one person. I truly believe that I can learn something from every single person that I come in contact with. And over the years, the people that have been most influential for that period of my life. And, I've taken what I've needed, so to speak, and applied it to life, and it's been really impactful. So there are so many different influential people throughout my life who I'm so grateful to. But if you really want me to name someone, I have to say my parents and my husband. They are my rocks.
Perfect. That was pretty rapid fire. And finally, a person, famous or otherwise, who you think we should get on the podcast?
I think you should get on your podcast, Rich Roll. I would be super interested to hear the conversation that the two of you would have. I think he's really interesting. He's also done Ultraman, and I think your conversations together, would be profound.
I think it would be an interesting conversation, that's for sure. Jackie Tann, thank you so much for coming on, being our first remote interview of the podcast. It was awesome to be on yours last year, and it's such a privilege to have you on ours.
Thank you, Rich.
That was Jackie Tann. I hope you all enjoyed what we discussed about in terms of embracing difficulty and choosing the hard things, and listening and understanding your own self and what you want to achieve in your life. Really amazing chat, and so privileged to have the time with Jack. If you did like that episode, feel free to share it with people that you think will also enjoy it. Otherwise, we would love you to follow the podcast, which way you get it. And until next time, peace.